Hello my dear students, welcome back to my channel. Today is the 6th lecture of geometrical optics. In the last class, we completed with spherical mirrors. In today's class, we will discuss one more problem of spherical mirror and then we will start with refraction from plane surface. So let's start with the class. In this question, there is a concave mirror of focus 20 centimeter and there is an object which is placed on the principal axis at a distance of 30 centimeter, right? But now what you have done is you have cut the mirror into two halves. So you have cut the mirror into two halves and shifted the two halves by 1 millimeter each as shown. So this half is shifted by 1 millimeter above and this half is shifted by 1 millimeter below the axis, right? So that means the new axis now for this mirror is this and for this mirror is this. Alright. The shifting is very small so that we will not consider this to be a separate mirror. If you consider this to be a separate mirror, in that case, this becomes the axis. The shift is very small, so you will consider this to be one mirror only the axis which was in this was the axis, this was the axis, this axis is shifted upwards for the upper mirror and downwards for the lower mirror by 1 millimeter. Alright, the object distance still remain the same and that is 30 centimeter. Okay, if the object distance is the same, then the image distance will also remain same. Also, focus of each part of the mirror is same because the radius of curvature has not changed. F is r by 2, right? So focus of each part of the mirror, is same because radius of curvature is same. Alright, and that will be equal to 20 centimeter because it is given in the question. Then by using mirror formula, 1 by v plus 1 by u is equal to 1 by f. Put u is equal to minus 30, f is equal to minus 20, you will get v is equal to minus 60 and m is equal to minus 2. So that means the image is real and inverted. So the image formed is at a distance of minus 60. That means suppose here. So this is the position of the image. This distance is 60 centimeter, right? But now what has happened is, see, all distances are measured from the axis, right? So here the axis has changed. For the top mirror, for this mirror, what you will say? You will say that this is the axis and the object is here. So the height of the object is 1 millimeter. Okay. So I will write for the top mirror, the height of object is 1 millimeter. Okay. So for the top mirror, the height of object is 1 millimeter. So the height of image will be how much? So height of image is equal to m times height of HO. Right. So m is minus 2, height of object is 1 millimeter. So height of image is minus 2 millimeter. Minus means opposite or inverted, right? So that means if the object is like this, the image will be above the axis. So this is the axis, object is below the axis, image will be above the axis at a distance 60 centimeter. So this will be the first image from the top mirror, I1, and this distance is 2 millimeter. Okay. Similarly, for the bottom mirror, what you will see? You will see again the image is formed at the distance of 60 centimeter, but again the magnification is minus 2. So the height of the image will be 2 millimeter and it will be inverted, right? So this time the axis is this line. For this mirror, this is the axis and this will be the height of the object, that is again 1 millimeter. But the height of the image will be inverted and 2 millimeter. So this will be the height of the image. So this is the image position, right? So this is the image position, let us say I2, and this is also 2 millimeter. So they have asked you in the question, find the separation between the two images formed. So the separation between the two images formed will be 2 millimeter from here. This is also 2 millimeter and this is also 2 millimeter. So the answer will be 6 millimeter. So the separation between the two mirrors, two images from two mirrors from two mirrors is 2 plus 2 plus 2, and that is 6 millimeter. Okay, so this I have written for top mirror. For bottom mirror I have not written, but it is the same thing, right? Same for bottom mirror. I can write it like this. Same for bottom mirror. Height of image is again minus 2 millimeter. Minus represents inverted. Okay, so if object is above axis, image should be below the axis. That is the meaning of inverted. Similarly, if the object is below axis, the image should be above the axis. That is the meaning of inverted, right? So the answer will be 6 millimeter. Okay, now suppose you have a two-dimensional object. You have a two-dimensional object which is perpendicular to the axis. So this is the axis and the object is perpendicular to the axis, right? In that case, the area, what is the change in area, or what is the magnification or the aerial magnification we need to find. Aerial magnification is also called superficial magnification. Now, suppose the magnification or the lateral magnification or the transverse magnification is m, then the size of this will be mb and the size of this will be ma. Why? Because both a and b, both these sides are perpendicular to the axis. That means it is transverse position. This is also transverse position and this is also transverse position because it is perpendicular to the axis, right? So transverse magnification is m, so b will become mb, a will become ma. So the new area will become m square ab. Initial area is ab. That means the superficial magnification will be m square ab divided by ab, that is m square, right? Where m is the lateral or the transverse magnification. So sometimes if they ask you what is the superficial magnification, then you will say it is equal to m square. Okay, we have derived it for a square, but this is valid for any shape. Okay, the answer will be m square. Right. Now the next point is in case of more than one optical component. So if there are more than one optical component, that means the image from the first optical component will be object for the second, and similarly the image from the second will be object for the third, and this will continue, right? So then what is the net magnification? So the net magnification or the overall magnification will be equal to size of final image by size of object, right? But size of final image by size of object can be written as I1 by O into I2 by I1 into I3 by I2 and so on. What does this mean? See, I1 cancel, I2 cancel, I3 will also cancel, right? So finally it will be I by In minus 1. Okay, so what I will write here, see, listen carefully. Why I have written like this? Because I1 is the size of first image, I2 is the size of second image, right? So size of first image by size of object is the magnification from first optical component. Then I2 by I1 is what? I2 is image from the second component and I1 is object for the second component. Again, size of image by size of object is a magnification from the second component. So that is why you will say finally the net magnification or the overall magnification when there are more than one reflection or diffraction is equal to m1 into m2 into m3 into dot dot dot, where m1 is the magnification from the first component, m2 is the magnification from the second component, and m3 is the magnification from the third component, and so on. Now let us start with refraction of light. So what is refraction? It is the phenomena of change in path of the light when it travels from one medium to other medium, or you can say the bending of light rays when it travels from one medium to other is called the phenomena of refraction, right? Refraction phenomena can be categorized depending upon the type of separating surface, which can be further subdivided depending upon the shape of the medium as follows. First is refraction from plane surface. Today we will be discussing refraction from plane surface. Now, refraction from plane surface can be further divided into refraction by one plane surface, then there is refraction by a glass slab, and then there is refraction by a prism. Okay, so there will be three parts in plane surface. Then there will be refraction from spherical surface. Now in refraction from spherical surface we will be discussing two things. First is refraction by a single spherical surface, and then there is refraction by lens. In lens there are two spherical surfaces. Okay, then refraction at any other surface, right? So first let us start with refraction at plane surface, right? Before starting refraction at plane surface, you must know the law of refraction. So we'll see the law of refraction now. So I'll show you in this diagram also first that suppose this is the incident ray and this is the interface separating two media. That means light is traveling from one medium to other. This is the normal. Okay. Then the light rays does not follow this original path, but it bends. Okay. Light ray, what happens is it bends, right? It can bend either towards the normal or it can bend away from the normal depending on the type of medium that we will see. Where will it bend? Okay. So this phenomena of bending of light is called refraction. Before proceeding further, we must know what is the law of refraction. So let's start with law of refraction. First thing is, you know that we have already discussed in the first lecture that frequency and hence color and also phase does not change, while velocity and wavelength changes when light moves from one medium to other. Okay. Second, we know that incident ray, refracted ray this time, and the normal will always lie on the same plane. Okay. And this normal is what? Normal at the point of incidence, right? Then there is the third thing, that is Snell's law. See, this angle is the angle of incidence. Okay. Angle of incidence is measured from the normal. Just like reflection, angle of angle of incidence was measured from the normal. Here also angle of incidence is measured from the normal. All right. Then there is angle of refraction, which is represented by R. Okay. Then Snell's law states that the ratio of sine I to sine R is a constant which depends on the two media, and this is actually equal to mu 2 1. Okay. So this can also be written as mu 2 by mu 1. So you will write mu 1 sine I is equal to mu 2 sine R. We have discussed what is refractive index in the first lecture itself. Okay, if you have forgotten what is the meaning of refractive index, please refer to the first lecture. In the properties of light and the properties of medium, I have discussed the term called refractive index represented by mu. Okay, this is mu 2 by mu 1 is also called, or mu 2 1 is also called relative refractive index. This is also called relative refractive index, right? So mu 1 sine I is equal to mu 2 sine R, where mu 1 is the refractive index of incident side. Mu 1 is the refractive index of incident side. And mu 2 is the refractive index of refracted side. Mu 2 is the refractive index of refracted side. So mu 1 sine I is equal to mu 2 sine R. But you can also write it like this. See, mu is what? Speed of light in medium divided by speed of light in vacuum divided by speed of light in medium, right? So I can write this also. C by Cm2 divided by C by Cm1. This can also be written as Cm1 by Cm2. That means the speed of light in medium 1 divided by speed of light in medium 2. In that case, you can also write Snell's law like this. Cm2 sin I is equal to Cm1 sin R, where Cm1 and Cm2 are the speeds of light in medium 1 and medium 2 respectively. Alright. See, there is an inverse relation between refractive index and the speed of light. Okay. But this can also be written as C. You know that C is equal to lambda f, and frequency does not change when light travels from one medium to other. So Cm2 can by Cm1 can also be written as lambda m2 by lambda m1, because f will get cancelled out. So this can also be written as, sometimes they give you the wavelength in medium 1 and medium 2. So Snell's law can also be written as lambda in medium 2 into sin I is equal to lambda in medium 1 into sin R. Whichever form you want to use, you can use for application of Snell's law depending on what is given in the question. If they have given you the refractive index, use this. If they have given you the speed of light in the medium, use this. Okay, and if they have given you the wavelength of light in the medium, use this, right? So here see sin I by sin r is equal to mu2 by mu1. This is mu21, right? And this is also equal to cm1 by cm2, and this is also equal to lambda 1 by lambda 2. Okay, so I'll write it again in this way. Sin I by sin r is equal to mu2 by mu1 is equal to cm1 by cm2, and this is also equal to lambda m1 by lambda m. So this is Snell's law. This is what? Snell's law, right? Then there is law of refraction in vector form. So in law of refraction in vector form, what we will discuss, suppose you have a unit vector along incident ray which is represented by I cap, and there is a unit vector along the normal, there is a unit vector along the normal which is represented by n cap, right? And there is a unit vector along the refracted ray which is represented by r cap. Okay, so this is I cap, this is n cap, and this is r cap, right? Then you will say that this is mu1 and this is mu2. Mu1 is the refractive index of the incident side and mu2 is the refractive index of the refracted side. Understood? Every time whenever we say mu1, then mu1 will represent the refractive index of the incident side, right? This is the incident side. So this is the interface separating the two media. Okay, interface separating the two media. Okay, so you will write it like this: mu1 into I cap cross n cap, cross product, is equal to mu2 into r cap cross n cap, right? Then how will you get Snell's law from this? See, mu1 into a cross b is what? AB sin theta. So I'll write 1 into I cap cross n cap. What is the angle between I cap and n cap? The angle between I cap and n cap is what? The angle between I cap and n cap is I. So you will write sin I. Mu2 into r cap cross n cap is what? R cap cross n cap is again 1 into sin r. See, you are getting the same thing, Snell's law. Mu1 sin I is equal to mu2 sin r, right? So in vector form, suppose they have given you the unit vector along incident ray and the normal. In that case, you will use this relation, or this is the Snell's law in vector form. Mu1 into I cap cross n cap is equal to mu2 into r cap cross n cap. This is, again I am repeating, this is law of refraction in vector form, right? Okay, then the application of Snell's law to check whether light will bend towards the normal or away from the normal. Okay, so first case is when light passes from a optically rarer medium to an optically denser medium. Now what is an optically rarer medium? I have discussed this in the first lecture also. Optically rarer medium is the medium in which the speed of light is more compared to an optically denser medium. Okay, so when light passes from a rarer medium to a denser medium, it bends towards the normal. Why? See, Snell's law. I have used here theta 1 and theta 2. So I'll write mu1 sin theta 1. Theta 1 is the angle of incidence and theta 2 is the angle of refraction. Okay, so from this you will get sin theta 1 by sin theta 2 is mu2 by mu1. This is nothing but Snell's law, right? Now, since this is rarer medium has less refractive index and more speed, because speed and refractive index are inversely related. So clearly you can see here mu1 is less than mu2. Okay, so whenever light is traveling from rarer medium to denser medium, that means mu1 is less than mu2. Okay, so if mu2 is greater than mu1, that means theta 1 is greater than theta 2. If theta 1 is greater than theta 2, that means the ray has bent towards the normal because the angle has decreased. Okay, so you have to remember, when light travels from a rarer medium to a denser medium, in that case what happens is the ray bends towards the normal. Then comes the second case, when light is traveling from a denser medium to a rarer medium. So in this case, this is the denser medium and this is the rarer medium. So this is a mistake here. This is denser medium and this is rarer medium. So in this case, light is traveling from the denser medium to the rarer medium. All right. So that means in this case, you will say that mu1 is greater than mu2 or mu2 is less than mu1. So this is less than 1. If this is less than 1, that means sin theta 1 is less than sin theta 2. Understood? Because this is less than 1. If sin theta 1 is less than sin theta 2, that means theta 1 is less than theta 2. So in this case, theta 1 is less than theta 2 or theta 2 is more. If theta 2 is more than theta 1, that means the ray has to bend away from the normal, only then the angle will increase. Right? So this time you will say that the ray bends away from the normal. So when light passes from rarer to denser, rays bend towards the normal, and when light passes from denser to rarer, in that case the ray bends away from the normal. Now the next case is when there are multiple parallel surfaces. When there are multiple parallel surfaces, in that case what will happen? See, suppose this is mu1, mu2, mu3, mu4, mu5, whatever. Okay, and here what you will say is, see, this angle is suppose theta 1, then this angle will be theta 2. But if this angle is theta 2, this is also theta 2 because they are parallel surfaces and this is a alternate angles. Similarly, then this angle becomes theta 3, this is also theta 3, right? And this will continue. So if you apply Snell's law here, what will you write? You will write mu1 sin theta 1 is equal to mu2 sin theta 2. This is application of Snell's law on the first interface. But then there is one more interface here. See, if this angle is theta 2, this angle is theta 2. So if you apply Snell's law in this interface, what will you write? Mu2 sin theta 2 is equal to mu3 sin theta 3. But mu2 sin theta 2 is here also. So you will get mu1 sin theta 1 is equal to mu2 sin theta 2 is equal to mu3 sin theta 3, and this will continue. So basically, see, from here you will get mu1 sin theta 1 is equal to mu2 sin theta 2 is equal to mu3 sin theta 3 is equal to mu4 sin theta 4, and that is equal to constant. Understood? So that means you can write indirectly, or mu sin theta is equal to constant. This is very important. Listen carefully. If two medium has same refractive index, if two medium has same refractive index in case of parallel interfaces, then rays will be parallel in that two interface. Why? Because if mu is same, theta has to be same. If theta is same, that means they are parallel. Rays will be parallel in the two interfaces. Rays will be parallel in the two interfaces. Okay, so that means suppose here this medium and this medium is same. That means if ray is starting from here, then finally it will be, suppose here, and it will be parallel to the, I can draw anywhere. So, see, this will be parallel to the initial ray. All right. So if two medium have same refractive index, the rays will be parallel. Whatever be the medium in between, the rays, this and this medium, the rays will be parallel. Okay. Whatever be the medium in between, in between. One example you can do here is, suppose you have a medium of variable refractive index. Suppose this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, and the refractive index here is varying with y. All right. But the refractive index here is mu and here also is mu. So suppose a ray of light is incident here like this, then it will continuously bend and form a curve. Why? Because at every point it is bending. If at every point it is bending, it will form a curve, right? But finally when it comes out, it will come out parallel to this. Because the medium is same, right? So if the medium is same, it means, see, here mu is varying with y, so you can treat this as infinite number of parallel interfaces, right? There is infinite number of parallel interfaces here. So if there is infinite number of parallel interfaces, that means what? That means that this is same case as the above case. Here there was countable number of interface, here there are infinite number of interface. But I have written here, whatever be the medium in between, we don't care. Just the interface has to be parallel, that's it. If the interface is parallel, in that case, if two medium have same refractive index, the rays will be parallel in both the medium. Okay, this is always valid in case of parallel interfaces. Alright, so here when mu is varying with y, in that case, because at a given y every point has same mu, at a given y every point has same mu, so every line is acting as an interface. Every line, infinite number of interfaces are there, right? Okay, I hope everybody has understood this. Now we will go to the next part, and that is conditions of no refraction. When there will be no refraction, and this is very simple. From Snell's law, you know that mu1 sine I is equal to mu2 sine R. Okay, so if I is 0 degree, that is normal incidence. If I is 0 degree, that is normal incidence. If I is 0 degree, that is normal incidence. In that case, you can clearly see from here, if I is 0, R is also 0. That means there will be no deviation. So for normal incidence, there is no deviation, or you can also write bending. So there is no bending. So for normal incidence, there is no refraction, or you can say there is no bending. Light passes undeviated from the boundary, or you can say the boundary will be invisible. Okay. Then the second thing is, if mu of both the medium is same, in that case mu sin I is equal to mu sin R, that is sin I equal to sin R, that means I equal to R. If I is equal to R, that means there is no bending, right? So there are two possibilities when there is no refraction. The first possibility is when the light ray is incident perpendicularly, that is I is 0, R is 0, then there will be no bending. Or the second thing is when the refractive index of both the medium is same. If the refractive index of both the medium is same, then light will not bend. Why? Because I will become equal to R according to Snell's law, right? Now, what is total internal reflection and critical angle? We know that when light travels from a denser medium to a rarer medium. So when light travels from a denser medium to a rarer medium, it bends away from the normal, right? It bends away from the normal. Now, at one particular angle of incidence, it might happen that it bends so much that it starts to graze the surface, right? It starts to graze the surface. Then the angle of incidence at which the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree is called the critical angle. Graze the surface, or you can say grazing emergence. Okay, grazing emergence means the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree. Okay, so at a particular angle theta c, that is called the critical angle, the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree. Now what happens if the angle of incidence becomes greater than critical angle? When the angle of incidence is greater than critical angle, now light no longer refracts. Why? Because it has reached the maximum refraction, that is maximum refraction angle, that is 90 degree. After that, if angle of incidence is made greater than the critical angle, then light, instead of getting refracted, it starts to reflect. This phenomena is called total internal reflection. Now this is possible only if light ray travels from denser to rarer medium. When light ray travels from rarer to denser medium, in that case this is not possible, because in that case light travels towards the normal. If light is bending towards the normal, it is not possible that the angle of refraction will become 90 degree. Alright, so this is possible only if light travels from denser medium to rarer medium. So again, what is total internal reflection? Here it is defined as the phenomena of reflection of light that take place when a light ray is traveling from a denser medium to a rarer medium, and it is incident at an angle which is greater than the critical angle. So when the angle of incidence is greater than the critical angle, in that case what will you say? You will say that the light ray, instead of getting refracted, it starts to get reflected. This phenomena is called total internal reflection. Now, why is it called total internal reflection? Because all the energy that is incident gets reflected, nothing gets transmitted. That is why it is said total internal reflection. Right? Now, how to find theta c? See, how to find theta c? Suppose this is the incident side which is denser, so I'll write this is mu1 and this is mu2, where mu1 is greater than mu2, that is light is traveling from a denser medium to a rarer medium, and this is the critical angle. If this is the critical angle, then the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree. So you will write it like this: mu1 sine theta c is equal to mu2 sine 90 degree, that is sine theta c is equal to mu2 by mu1, or theta c is equal to sine inverse mu2 by mu1. I have written it here also. Theta c is sine inverse mu2 by mu1. This is the critical angle. You can remember it like this also. Whenever light travels from denser to rarer medium, theta c is equal to sine inverse mu rarer by mu denser. Mu rarer, that is the refractive index of rarer medium, divided by refractive index of denser medium. Normally the rarer medium is air. Normally light travels from a medium to air. Okay, in that case it becomes refractive index of air is 1, so it becomes mu r is 1, so it becomes sine inverse 1 by mu d. All right. So, but in general we will write theta c, that is the critical angle, is equal to sine inverse mu r by mu d. Right. There is one more thing that you should know in Snell's law. So, let us come back to Snell's law. Listen carefully. This is the incident ray, this is the refracted ray, and this is the normal. The incident ray and the refracted ray lies on the other side of normal. They do not lie on the same side. So I'll write here the incident ray, I'll represent incident ray with I, the refracted ray R, do not lie on the same side of normal. Do not lie on the same side of normal. This is very important. Do not lie on the same side of normal. What I mean here is, see, if the incident ray is like this, then the refracted ray cannot be like this. It will be on the other side of the normal. Okay, incident ray and the refracted ray lies on the other side of normal. Okay, and not on the same side. Now coming back to total internal reflection, see, let us discuss one situation. Suppose this is a medium, this is mu1, this is mu2, and there is an object in medium mu1, and it is given that mu1 is greater than mu2. That means mu1 is greater than mu2. That means what? That means light is traveling from denser to rarer medium. Light is traveling from denser to rarer medium. Denser to rarer medium. Okay. Yes. Then let us draw the ray diagram. So here you know that when light travels from a denser to a rarer medium, in that case what happens, at one particular angle, that is the critical angle, the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree, right? So this is the angle, the critical angle at which the angle of refraction becomes 90 degree. Okay, the same thing can happen in this side also. In fact, in 3 dimensions it will form a cone. In 3 dimensions it will form a cone, right? In 3 dimensions it will form a cone, and this angle is again theta c, and this angle is 90 degree. Okay, then we need to find this radius. This region, this circular region is called the circle of illuminance. This is called the circle of illuminance. Why? Because light from this object can come out of the interface only from this region. After this region, what is going to happen? After this region, the light, instead of getting refracted, it will start to reflect. That means light will not go to the other medium. So the light will go to the other medium only through this region, which is called circle of illuminance. Okay, so this is the region from where light can go to the other medium. Region from where light can go to the other medium. Light can go to the other medium is called the circle of illuminance. Okay, so now we need to find the radius of the circle of illuminance. So we need to find the radius of circle of illuminance, right? So suppose this height is h, that means the object is at a depth h in the interface, from the interface. Okay, and this is the radius of the circle of illuminance. Okay, then what will you say? This is the, so I'll draw it like this. See, this is the, so this is the radius of the circle of illuminance, and this triangle is formed. This angle is theta c, then this angle is also theta c, right? So from here you can see that tan theta c is equal to r by h, right? That means r is equal to h tan theta c, right? Also, you know that sin theta c, that is the critical angle, is mu rarer by mu denser. Now mu rarer this time is mu2 and mu denser is mu1, because light is traveling from denser to rarer medium. Light is traveling from denser to rarer medium. Only in that case TIR can take place. So I have told you the simple formula of critical angle. Sin theta c is mu rarer by mu denser, and that is mu rarer is mu2, mu denser is mu1. So this is the value of sin theta c. From this you can find the value of tan theta c, because this is perpendicular by hypotenuse. So you have to find perpendicular by base. Now base will be what? Under root hypotenuse square minus perpendicular square. So from this you will get the value of tan theta c, and tan theta c is mu2 by under root mu1 square minus mu2 square, right? So this is the value of tan theta c. Now tan theta c, from here you will get, when you put the value of tan theta c here, you will get the value of r. So the value of r is h mu2 divided by under root mu1 square minus mu2 square. This is the radius of circle of illuminance, right? So this is the radius of circle of illuminance. Now they can also ask you what is the semi-vertex angle of the conical region formed, right? So the means the angle or the semi-vertex angle of the conical region formed of the circle of illuminance is theta c. Okay, so I'll write here the semi-vertex angle of the conical, the semi-vertex angle of the conical region is equal to theta c, right? And you know the value of tan theta c here, or you can say we know the value of sin theta c here. So I will write theta c is equal to sin inverse mu2 by mu1. And if they ask you the full angle, of the cone, then you will say the angle is 2 theta c, right? Okay, now one more thing that they ask is what is the fraction of energy, that is transmitted to the other side, okay? For this we must know the concept of solid angle. See, you know that from this source of light, light is transmitted or light is emitted in all directions, right? light is emitted in all directions, but light comes out only through this circle of illuminance, right? Light comes out only through this circle of illuminance, and the semi-vertex angle of this cone is theta c. The semi-vertex angle of this cone is theta c. Okay, now what is the relation between semi-vertex angle and the solid angle? What is the relation between semi-vertex angle and solid angle? Relation between semi-vertex angle and solid angle. See, you know that the solid angle is defined as 2 pi into 1 minus cos theta. Okay, here it will be theta c. So this is the solid angle formed here. This is the solid angle formed when the semi-vertex angle is given to you. Okay. So now suppose E energy is emitted from this point source of light. So you will say in 4 pi solid angle, E energy is emitted at a particular point, then or at a particular distance from the point source. Okay. So in unit solid angle, E by 4 pi energy will be emitted, right? So in this much solid angle, how much energy is emitted? So this much solid angle means what? 2 pi into 1 minus cos theta c. This much solid angle, how much energy is emitted? E divided by 4 pi into 2 pi into 1 minus cos theta c, right? So pi cancelled, you will get the energy emitted, or you can say the energy emerging from the circular region, or you can say the energy which reaches the other medium is equal to E by 2 into 1 minus cos theta c. Now they have asked us what? They have asked us what is the fraction of energy that reaches the other medium. So the fraction of energy that reaches the other medium is fraction of energy that reaches the other medium is how much? Fraction of energy that reaches the other medium is equal to E by 2 into 1 minus cos theta c divided by the total energy, that is E. So this is very important. If you remember, it is very useful formula for JEE Advanced. The fraction of energy that is emitted, or you can say that is released, or you can say that is entering the second medium, the fraction of energy that has reached the second medium is equal to 1 minus cos theta c by 2. So you know that sin theta c is equal to mu 2 by mu 1. So cos theta c will be how much? Cos theta c will be equal to under root mu 1 square minus mu 2 square divided by mu 1. Okay. So from this, there is one important point here. This is independent of the height. You can see that it depends on refractive index, but it does not depend on h. The fraction of energy which is emitted to, or you can say which is going to the other medium, is independent of the height of the object, or you can say independent of the depth of the object inside the denser medium from the interface. Okay, so this is independent of height, or you can say independent of h, or you can say independent of depth, right? So whatever be this height of the object, the fraction of energy which is coming out of the interface will remain same, 1 minus cos theta c by 2, where cos theta c is this under root mu 1 square minus mu 2 square divided by mu 1, right? Now let us do one problem based on circle of illumination. See, suppose you have an object here which is at a distance 20 centimeter below the surface of water. So this is water whose refractive index is 4 by 3, and this is air, refractive index 1. Okay, and you are viewing from the top. Okay, then find the radius of an opaque object you can say find the minimum radius of an opaque object required so that the object cannot be visible from the top. So that the object cannot be visible from the top. Cannot be visible from the top. What does this mean is, so this is the object here, and they are asking you what is the radius of a region. That means you should cover the circle of illumination. When you cover the circle of illumination, what will happen is this light ray will never reach the other medium. If the light ray from the object is not reaching the other medium, the eye cannot see it, right? So that is why what you have to do here is you have to cover the radius of means this the circle of illumination. So here you have to cover the circle of illumination. You have to cover the circle of illumination. You have to cover the circle of illumination, right? So once you cover the circle of illumination with suppose a cardboard, in that case no light from the object will be able to reach the other side. Why? Because after this region it starts to do TIR and no light from this object is reaching the other side. Okay, so that means that you have to basically find the radius of circle of illumination. Okay, the radius of circle of illumination will be the radius of an opaque object which is required to cover the region so that the light from this object cannot reach the other side. Okay, so you have already seen that the radius r can be found out using, so this angle is theta c, right? So you will write tan theta c is equal to r by h. So r by 20, so that means r is equal to 20 tan theta c. Now sin theta c is mu rarer by mu denser. So sin theta c is mu rarer, this time is 1, and mu denser is 4 by 3, right? So from this you have got the value of sin theta c. Then what will be tan theta c? So tan theta c will be perpendicular by base. Now base will be how much? Under root 16 minus 9, right? So that will be equal to 3 by root 7. So once you have got the value of tan theta c, you have also got the value of the radius. So the radius will be 20 into 3 by root 7. So this is the minimum radius of the cardboard required, which if you use it to cover this circle of illumination, in that case no light from this object will be reaching the other side and this object will never be visible. Okay, so also suppose this object is a fish, right? A fish can see only the outside world only through this region of circle of illumination. Okay, again I'll repeat, a fish can see the outside world only through the region of circle of illumination. All right, now next thing is angle of deviation. Okay, the angle of deviation, we will divide it into two cases. First is case 1, when light ray travels from rarer to denser. So when light ray travels from rarer to denser, in that case you know that the ray bends towards the normal, right? The ray bends towards the normal. So let us draw this ray. This is the incident ray and this is the normal. Okay, this is the normal, and let us draw the refracted ray which is bending towards the normal. Okay, so this is bending towards the normal here, and the angle of deviation is found out by the angle between incident ray and the emergent ray. Now this is the emergent ray here. Okay, so this is the incident ray, this is the emergent ray. The angle between incident ray and the emergent ray is called the angle of deviation. So suppose this angle is I, this angle is I, then this whole angle, this angle is I, then this whole angle is I, right? And this angle is R. This angle is the angle of deviation because this is the angle of incidence. Sorry, this is the incident ray and this is the emergent ray. The angle between incident ray and the emergent ray is the angle of deviation. So delta clearly you can see is I minus R. So case 1, when ray of light travels from a rarer medium to a denser medium, in that case the deviation is equal to I minus R. Okay. Now from Snell's law, you know that mu1 sine I is equal to mu2 sine R, where mu1 is refractive index of the incident side and mu2 is the refractive index of the refracted side, right? From this you will get the value of R and you will put it here. Then you will get the angle of deviation. So this is case 1. Then this is case 2. When light travels from denser medium to rarer medium. When light travels from denser medium to rarer medium. Now when light travels from denser medium to rarer medium, there will be two subcases. Why? Because you know that when light travels from a denser to rarer medium, there can be refraction, there can be reflection also. Up to critical angle, there will be refraction and the light ray will bend away from the normal. But after critical angle, instead of refraction, there is reflection. So there will be a different type formula for the angle of deviation. Okay. So let us see, when case 1 means in case 2, case A, a light ray traveling from a denser to rarer medium at an angle alpha which is less than the critical angle. In that case, what will be the angle of deviation? Okay. So in this case, see, this is the incident ray, and this is the refracted ray, right? So suppose the angle of refraction is beta, right? Then the angle between the incident ray and the refracted ray is delta, that is the angle of deviation. From here you can clearly see that delta is equal to beta minus alpha, right? So here delta is equal to beta minus alpha, or you can say R minus I, because sometimes you also write the angle of incidence as I and the angle of refraction as R. Okay. Again you can use Snell's law. To find the value of R using mu1 sin I is equal to mu2 sin R, right? So this is denser side mu1 and this is rarer side mu2. Okay. Now see, what is the maximum deviation here? What is the maximum deviation for refraction? So what is the maximum? I'll write it here in case A. What is the maximum deviation? What is the maximum deviation in case of refraction? What is the maximum deviation for refraction? Now, deviation is maximum when the angle of incidence, that is in this case we have taken alpha, the angle of incidence, that is alpha, becomes equal to the critical angle, that is theta c. In that case you will say that the deviation is maximum. And what will be the deviation? So delta is equal to, listen carefully, beta minus alpha, right? Delta is equal to beta minus alpha. You can also write this as R minus I, and you also know that mu1 sin I is equal to mu2 sin R, right? But you know that in this case I is theta c. So I will write here I is theta c, and in case of critical angle the R is 90 degree, right? So you will write delta is equal to R, that is pi by 2 minus I is sin theta c. Okay. Now sin theta c, what will be the value of R is pi by 2 and I is theta c, sorry, not sin theta c, we have to write the I is theta c. So this is the maximum deviation for refraction. Okay. Now case B, what happens if light is incident at an angle which is greater than the critical angle? What happens if light is incident at an angle which is greater than the critical angle? In that case you will say that the angle of deviation is pi minus 2 alpha, where alpha is the angle of incidence, but this time alpha is greater than theta c. How? This we have studied in reflection only. The angle of deviation in this case will be the angle between the incident ray and the reflected ray, and this is the angle of deviation. Now if this angle is alpha, this angle is alpha, this whole angle is pi, so delta is equal to pi minus 2 alpha, right? But here alpha is greater than the critical angle. That means the angle of incidence is greater than the critical angle. Now in this case, what is the maximum deviation? You know that the deviation is maximum when this alpha is minimum. From this you can see deviation is maximum when alpha is minimum. Now minimum alpha here is what? Theta c. The minimum alpha here is theta c. That is why you will write the maximum deviation can be pi minus 2 theta c. Why? Why minimum alpha is theta c? Because if angle of incidence is less than theta c, in that case there will be no reflection but refraction. Reflection starts from an angle which is greater than theta c, right? So that is why it will start from this, alpha will start from theta c. So the minimum value of alpha will be theta c. So the maximum value of deviation will be pi minus 2 theta c, right? So that means mathematically if I write, see, mathematically if I write delta is equal to see, from here delta is equal to r minus I if I is less than theta c or even equal to theta c, but delta is equal to pi minus 2I if I is greater than theta c. Why? Because here there is reflection and here there is refraction. Understood? So now if they ask you to draw the graph between the angle of deviation and the angle of incidence. So the graph between the angle of deviation and the angle of incidence. You know that for I which is less than theta c, you have to see this refraction, right? And for refraction you have seen that the maximum value of the angle of deviation comes at I is equal to theta c, and that value is pi by 2 minus theta c. Okay, and then what happens is after theta c there is reflection. Now reflection, you can see that this curve is a linear curve with I, okay, and it will go up to I equal to 90 degrees. So I'll draw here I is equal to 90 degree. So if I draw the curve, you will see this is a non-linear curve and it will go from here to here. But at theta c, the curve shifts to this, okay, and the maximum value is at the maximum value of angle of deviation is again at I equal to theta c, and that is pi minus 2 theta c. So you will draw from here pi minus 2 theta c, okay, pi minus 2 theta c, this will be the line. So at one particular theta c there is two value of angle of deviation, but there can only be one value. Now at, listen carefully, at I equal to theta c, at I equal to theta c there is still refraction. Reflection has not started yet. So that is why what I will do is I will draw a circle here, because this line will start from I greater than theta c and not I equal to theta c. Up to I equal to theta c, this will be the graph. This will be the graph for I greater than theta c. Okay, and this value is pi minus 2 theta. Okay, so the graph is changing suddenly and there is a discontinuity in this graph at I equal to theta c. This is a very important graph to of angle of deviation versus the angle of incidence when light travels from a denser to a rarer medium. This is the case when light travels from denser to rarer. Okay, when light travels from rarer to denser, there is only one case I have discussed. But when light travels from denser to rarer, there are two sub cases. When I is less than theta c, there is refraction, and when I is greater than theta c, there is reflection. Then we have drawn the graph of angle of deviation versus the angle of incidence, right? Okay, now let us look at one simple question, and this is also a very important question. there is a ray of light which is incident on a glass sphere. So we have a glass sphere and a ray of light is incident at an angle of 60 degree as shown in the figure. Then find the angles R, R dash and E, and also find the total angle of deviation after two refractions. Okay. Now before doing this question, what we can do is, see, we can generalize it. So let us say you have a sphere and suppose this is the point where the light is getting incident. Okay. And this is the angle of incidence, let's say I. Okay. I was given as 60 degree, let us say I. Okay. In general I am doing. This is 1, this is mu. Right. Then this is the refracted ray here. Again I will draw the normal like this. So this is the normal here. And then again we will draw the refracted ray. Right. So this is the incident ray, this is the ray inside the sphere, and then this is the emergent ray. Okay. So we can write it also, this is the incident ray, this is the incident ray, this is the emergent ray. Okay. Now this is I, this is R, but because this is the center, this is radius, that means this is an isosceles triangle. Now if this is an isosceles triangle, then this is R, this is also R. Okay. And if this is R, listen carefully now, this is very important here. I will apply Snell's law in this surface. If I apply Snell's law in this surface, I will write 1 into sine I is equal to mu into sine R. 1 into sine I is equal to mu into sine R. That means sine I is equal to mu sine R. Okay. Now I will apply the same Snell's law in this surface. What will you write? Mu sine R is equal to, suppose this angle is E, 1 into sine E. Now if you compare this equation and this equation, what will you see? These two sides are same, that means this two also same, that means I has to be equal to E. Okay. So that means I has to be equal to E. So first thing that they have asked you, find this one, this we have already found out. Okay. Right. Now what we need to find is the angle of deviation. Listen carefully now, we need to find the angle of deviation. So this is the incident ray, this is the incident ray, the angle between incident ray and the emergent ray is the angle of deviation, and this is the emergent ray, and we can clearly see that this angle is the angle of deviation, which is delta. Okay. Right. Now from here you will see this is I, this is R, that means this angle is I minus R. Similarly here this is E, this is R, this angle is E minus R, but E is equal to I, right? And you can also see that this is an exterior angle in this triangle. Now you know that the exterior angle is equal to the sum of two remote interior angles. So that means you will say that delta is equal to I minus R plus E minus R, but I is equal to E, so you will write delta is equal to 2 into I minus R. So this is the formula for angle of deviation in case of a transparent sphere. Okay. Now if you look at this problem, in this problem they have given you the value of I. So I is 60 degree, right? And they have given you the value of refractive index. So I will use Snell's law in this surface and I will write 1 into sine 60 is equal to root 3 into sine R. Okay. From here you can see sine 60 is root 3 by 2, root 3 sine R. That means sine R is equal to half. That means R is 30 degree. So we have got the value of R, you have got the value of R dash, and E is equal to I, you already know. So E will be 60 degree, right? And then they have asked you the angle of deviation. You know that the angle of deviation is 2 into I minus R. So that is 2 into 60 minus 30. You have to remember this formula. 2 into 30, that is equal to 60 degree. Okay. So this is a general theory that I have discussed, the angle of deviation in case of a transparent sphere. In fact, you can give a heading here. This is angle of deviation due to a transparent sphere. Angle of deviation due to a transparent sphere. Okay, but there is one more thing here that is very interesting. Listen carefully now. Show that there cannot be total internal reflection. I am writing in short form. TIR means total internal reflection. Show that there cannot be total internal reflection at the second surface. You know that at the second surface, light is traveling from denser medium to a rarer medium, because this is 1, this is mu, this is 1, right? So light is traveling from a denser medium to a rarer medium. So there is a possibility that there can be TIR, or total internal reflection. But we need to show that there cannot be total internal reflection at the second surface in case of a sphere. Listen carefully now. See, okay. So first surface, you know that from first surface 1 into sin I is equal to mu into sin R. And from second surface, before starting or before writing for the second surface, you know that at the second surface critical angle is how much? Critical angle is theta c is equal to sine inverse mu rarer by mu denser. Okay, understood? Sine inverse mu rarer by mu denser. Mu denser is mu. And from here what is the value of R? See, for second surface angle of incidence is R. See here, for second surface angle of incidence is R, right? So I'll write for second surface, this is the critical angle, and for second surface the angle of incidence is R. Angle of incidence is R. Now what is the value of R? From this surface I have got the value of R as sine inverse sine I by mu. Sine inverse sine I by mu. Okay. Now critical angle is sine inverse 1 by mu and R is sine inverse sine I by mu. You know that sine I has to be less than 1, right? Or you can say at max it can be equal to 1. Sine I is less than 1. Okay. So if sine I is less than 1, clearly from here you can see that theta c is sine inverse 1 by mu and R is sine inverse sine I by mu. Sine I is less than 1. That means sine inverse this R is less than sine inverse 1 by mu. So that means R is less than theta c. So clearly you can see that R is less than theta c, right? If R is less than theta c, that means angle of incidence at the second surface is always less than theta c. Angle of incidence at the second surface is always less than theta c. Now if the angle of incidence at the second surface is less than theta c, then you will say that therefore there cannot be any total internal reflection. Okay, so in case of a transparent sphere where both sides has same medium and the refractive index of the glass sphere is more than the surrounding medium, in that case it is not possible for the second surface of the sphere to show total internal reflection. Alright, okay. Remaining things we will do in the next class. In the next class we will do some problems based on Snell's law, and we will also discuss image formation due to plane surface. Right, till then, bye bye, take care, and please like, share and subscribe my channel.